Welcome, everybody. We will call the call to order your city council meeting tonight, and we're going to have a moment of silence and a salute to the flag started by Mr. Mark Crail. Ms. Johnson, will you please call the roll?
Mayor Jerome.
Here.
Ms. Tillett.
Here.
Mr. Rolfson.
Here.
Ms. Rich.
Here.
Mr. Slavy.
Here.
Mr. Crail.
Here.
Mr. Roulette.
Here.
Okay, real quick, I heard some of the cell phones going off there earlier. If you would, please turn your cell phones off, put them on vibrate, and if you would. And also, I would please urge City Council to put your cell phones away and during the course of this meeting tonight. I really would appreciate that. And with that, just want to start off this. Tonight we're having a meeting to discuss a discussion between the council and the city manager. And I want to thank you all for taking the time to be here tonight. The public will be able to speak after this council discussion has taken place. None of us working alone has all the answers. Our community working together, our council working together is what makes our city better. Our city has always had strong citizen participation in our advisory committees, and the number of citizens attending council meetings continues to rise. We won't always agree with every decision each of us makes or every decision decided by the council. It is important to point out that this council functions as a single body. No single member comments or directives, and only the decision by the council as a majority move forward. When the individual council member places items on the table, they are not directives to our city manager unless a consensus of all the council agrees with that. There has been much printed and talked about in our community since Mr. Pastu read his memorandum to the council last week, including a statement that he intended to tender his resignation at the February 2nd council meeting. Let's set some facts straight. One, the city council did not fire our attorney. A request for proposals did pass, which is the first time in a decade that the council decided to review this outside contract position. Reviewing outside contractors is a good practice and means we are doing our job for the citizens. Reviewing does not necessarily mean the current firm will or will not be replaced. The council did not terminate or ask for the resignations of anyone at any meeting, and I personally did not ask for anyone to be terminated or ask for any resignations in public or in private. I want to be clear to our citizens and to this council. The deputy city manager position, which was funded by the former council as an assistant in a position that reports to the city manager, not the council. Here's a little history in the form of our government. The city does have a charter. Think of it like this city's constitution. Our city charter is very clear as to the city manager's duties, and it is clear as to the city council's powers and obligations. It is clear as to the mayor's powers and duties also. The city charter was voted by the citizens of Mount Dora and is reviewed periodically by a group of our citizens. Any changes must be voted on by the residents of Mount Dora. The charter and the city organization's chart show us the city council, shows that the city council works for the citizens. It also shows that the city manager works for the council, not the reverse. Our form of government defined in the charter is the council-manager form of government, with all the powers of the city vested in the elected city council. According to the Florida League of Cities, training and manuals prepared for elected officials, that form of government is defined as a council hiring a professional administrator for implementation of policies. We are here tonight to discuss the city manager's memorandum stating his intent to tender his resignation at the February 2nd meeting. The day before last week's meeting, I met with Mr. Pastu along with former council member Denny Wood. Mr. Pastu indicated he wanted to resign. During that meeting, I asked several times if Mr. Pastu would reconsider and stay. Mr. Wood also asked several times. Mr. Pastu's answer to both of us was no. This past week, I met with Mr. Pastu again, along with the Chamber Commerce President, Rob English, asking if Mr. Pastu would reconsider. Again, the answer was no. Our city has been someplace special for over 100 years. We have weathered storms and disagreements and celebrated a lot of successes. We have caring citizens, dedicated employees, and enthusiastic visitors. We will continue to be someplace special and will not be distracted by the noise of those who do not wish our city well. Here's now the rest of the meeting will proceed. Here's how the rest of the meeting will proceed at this time. I will shortly open to the floor to our council members. Mr. Pastu, by charter and by practice, is allowed to participate, and I welcome him to participate. After the council discussion, we will open the floor for public comments. I will allow the public to comment. After that, we will return to the council. If there has been a motion made before the public comment, council will have another opportunity to comment, then we will vote. No speaker cards are going to be necessary. I know somebody put out things about speaker cards. They're not going to be necessary tonight. What I'm going to do is allow the public to speak, and if we got to be here for a long time tonight, hunker in, we're going to do it. And so you have that opportunity to speak. The only limitation that I'm going to be placing is the 3-minute limitation that we normally do at our meetings, and that is 3 minutes per speaker. When it comes time for the public to speak, please again come up to the microphone. We'll have the 3 minutes per person. From what I understand, and I thank Mr. English for this, he provided us with the timers that we use during the forums. And when you start speaking, the green light will go on. All right. I'll tell you, this is good. And when you're down to 30 seconds, the yellow light will go on. It's cool. And when you get to the end of your 3 minutes, the red light will go on. Okay. With that, you were please asked to conclude your sentence and quickly your thought at that time. Okay, and so be respectful of other people who maybe want to speak. I know some people are going to will only be saying a few sentences and might only take about a minute, less than that. But you will be allowed the 3 minutes if you need it. There is a lot of people going to speak tonight, and I can see that by the attendance here tonight. And I really thank you all for being here and to expressing the thoughts of our city. So as of right now, I guess the only thing I need to do now is to open up to the council for comment.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Olson.
it seems to me with your statement about Mr. Pastu's position, if he wishes to, it seems to me a good beginning might be to have him respond to that if he wishes
Could, is your microphone on? Mr. Olson, you did a sound check real quick on your microphone with the,
Me?
yeah, just, yeah.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
Okay, okay, great, thank you. Yes, if you, yeah, you're part of the council up here as far as the discussions, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Part of it is just to note, as the mayor alluded to last week when I met with him, there was questioned numerous times if I was would reconsider, and the answer, was no. The context of it was, certainly I didn't see that there was any opportunity for me to work in the environment that was seemed to be taking place. Last week's meeting gave a little hope. So let me just say, my understanding for tonight's purpose of the meeting is to clear the air, resolve some of the frustration I've experienced recently that prompted me to consider resignation. I greatly appreciate the City Council's willingness to consider this in light of my correspondence submitted last week. While the correspondence submitted was strongly worded, I do respect the Council's authority to effectuate change. This is part of the reason that I have an employment agreement with separation clauses recognizing that's the prerogative of Council. I would like to dispel some rumors and perceptions that I don't want to be here in Mount Dora. That is not true. I do, but it needs to be on the terms that I understood when I accepted the job position last June regarding my latitude to effectively run the organization. Clearly, there may have been some changes, obviously, with the November election. The other rumors I'd like to dispel is, and I'm probably going into far more personal information than I should, but I'm willing to do so to set the record straight. One of the questions is not selling my home in Michigan and my wife relocating. There are many factors that altered this transition plan, such as my father-in-law passing away the Saturday after I had accepted the position. My mother-in-law had a minor accident in June and convalesced with my wife for several weeks afterwards, along with 2 other minor surgeries since. The context of it, my wife's an only child, and she's there for her mother. As the election campaign evolved and just with discussions regarding Mr. Regentine and Mr. Shepard, I kind of decided to wait and see how this played out before completing my transition. I think any reasonable person in my shoes would have done the same. The proof is that we're here tonight. The other rumor I need to dispel is that I do not have another job offer anywhere. So I prefer to stay here, but at the same time, there's some issues for us to resolve. A brief review of what I contained in the January 19th memo. What prompted some of it was rumors that big changes were coming, and the moment that it was starting to affect some of our employees, as I had heard through our HR director when he was up at our care here, our clinic, prompted me to say, well, we've got to do something. We can't let this go on much longer. There is a frustration, I admitted, with with the ability to manage the agenda. I do work for the entire City Council and feel it's important that they have all equal opportunity to consider any policy and or other decisions. I've not had experience in the past where that's been questioned, as I mentioned last week. Looking forward, not backward, we have numerous opportunities and challenges, and it's important to focus on these, such as the Wekiva Parkway Innovation District, a lot of internal restructuring, downtown parking, and the Lake Wekiva Trail. The frustration, from my end of it is to focus on big ticket items. But the one thing that was striking was what I felt was an apparent lack of trust and confidence in my ability as a manager. I recognize that there are outside influences other than those in the manager's office and through the city attorney impacting some council decisions. It is hard for me to develop a cohesive city council, city manager relationship when that environment exists. Generally, I'm just asking the council to let me manage the day-to-day affairs of the council, including the relationships with the council. As it was posed last week, what it would take for me to stay, first and foremost, an employment agreement between myself and the Deputy City Manager, Mark Regentine. The conversations out there regarding his involuntary separation and or defunding the position, I would like to see ceased. Mr. Regentine has been phenomenally helpful in my transition, very loyal, and looking at the opportunities and challenges would be an important part of the management team, I think, for us to succeed in addressing those. I feel strongly that I would like him to stay, which is the other reason for the agreement, is to put that to rest. The other thing I would look for is probably a better feeling regarding the role and relationship of the manager and council. basically, as I alluded to last week, are you comfortable with a strong manager? There are a number of items in the charter that leads one to recognize as a strong city manager charter, responsible for all personnel, budget development, putting together reports for the city council. But the question the council has to ask itself, and it's a very legitimate question, is do you want a city manager that provides strong leadership in running the organization, that is active in developing the broader agenda, or do you want a city manager that is more of an administrator seeking direction from city council on most matters? It's a legitimate question. And I'm accepting if the council prefers the latter, then so be it. We talked about a goal-setting meeting. While I may still have some reservations that I might not be the right manager for this city council, but based on my SWOT analysis, I did feel strongly that for long-term planning and predictable service delivery, maintaining the current millage rate, current assessment fee, not looking to reduce positions, but also consider some additions where possible, and certainly redevelopment of downtown lakefront. In conclusion, again, I want to thank the City Council for the opportunity. I am again respectful of the democratic process and certainly accepting of whatever decision the council decides without any bitterness or rancor. For my benefit, though, I would ask council to consider, where I stand certainly next week regarding two actions, one with Mr. Regentin's employment agreement and then as well as with my separation agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
May I continue?
Mr. Creel.
I'll defer. I'll follow him then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Mayor, I'm an optimist, so let me begin with the good news. People of Mount Dora love this community, and I thank you, along with the mayor, for being here this evening. I certainly agree with his comments on that. To me, Mount Dora is the best place in Florida, and that's why I chose to be here. Some of you were born here and raised here. Others of us just discovered it, but we're all here because we love this place. The bad news is that we have gotten off to a rough start, I think, would be the way I'd like to say it. So rough of a start that Mr. Pastu, and I didn't see much hope in his statement last week. I'm feeling better right now, but so rough of a start that he is considering resigning. Now, I've not been to marriage counseling, although spending my wife's birthday here with all of you tonight,
You're going to need it, definitely.
I love you, honey, if you're out there. Anyway, I suspect that if all of us here on the stage tonight were to get into counseling with the goal of rebuilding our relationships, the counselor would sit us down and ask us some critically important questions. If the answers to any of these questions by either person in a marriage, or in this case, the majority of people here on the stage, if the answer to those questions is no, then there's not much we can do. I think the questions would be something like this. Do you want to stay together, or has this relationship been so badly damaged that the only way you can see to move forward is to split up? I hope we all want to stay together. That's my hope. The second question, if the answer to the first one is, yeah, let's give it a try, let's try to stay together. The second question is, for each one of us, even though you think your behavior has been mostly justified and maybe has been caused by simple misunderstandings or miscommunications, would you concede that at least some of the problems in this relationship are your fault. And I'm going to say yes. And I think if everybody is honest, there's plenty of blame to go around. The third thing is, okay, if there is blame to go around, but what if we were to agree on a plan to address the things that you can't stand about me and the things that drive me crazy about you? Could we agree to stay together while we work to define who does what in our relationship and try to learn how to stop doing those things that really honk the other person off? In the meantime, we won't make any rash decisions, and we'll work on the things that we all agree are important. And Mr. Pestu mentioned the Wekiva Parkway, the Innovation District. There are any number of those things. That's my proposition. There are some things that we all agree on that need our attention, and there are some things like personnel issues and meeting minutes that will just have to wait until we work to heal our relationship. And I think we can do that because we all love Mount Dora, and I think it's worth a try.
Mayor? Yeah, thank you. I'd like to echo the eloquent words of my colleague in the yellow shirt, who is missing his wife's birthday. And I'd like to also add my perspective for what it's worth to this council. Mr. Pestu has been on this journey for a mere 7 months. In that time, in my view, he has fully and clearly analyzed the city's SWOT status and urged that we as council members should meet soon to consider that analysis. Remember, we're talking about reviewing our cities under the SWOT understanding or SWOT analysis, our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities, and our threats. And our citizens require, in my view, council, our immediate attention to that analysis in line with Mr. Crail's suggestion that we take a step back, which I was impressed with at the last council meeting. We can't do that effectively without Mr. Pestu's leadership. He's the one that created the SWOT analysis. I don't think it's been done for a long time in this city, and maybe it has, and I don't remember it. If someone in a responsible position came to me and knocked on my door at my house and said, "Cal, you got a great opportunity here," or worse, they said, "You know, you got some real threats looking at you in the face," do you think I would slam the door in the face of that warning or that opportunity? And I would do so if I did only at my own peril. So I think we should be clear that the reason you all are here, and the only reason we're here, is we're talking about these personnel issues, and that we're not talking about our SWOT analysis or our managers managing, is because, in my sense, some on the council or someone outside the council want to get rid of Mark Regentine, want him to leave or adjust his position somehow. Mr. Pestu has made it clear he wants Mr. Regentine to stay. I don't mind expressing to you that's my wish as well, without qualification. Mr. Regentine works for Mr. Pestu. He does not work for me or this council, period. And the other thing that concerns me, and I was really pleased, Mr. Mayor, to hear your introductory words, that it is the council that deals with Mr. Pestu and Mr. Pastu that deals with everyone else on his staff throughout the 100-plus employees that we have. And so when a member of this council sends an email verbally spanking Mark and then sends it to all council members, we all are now becoming involved as a council into management issues and at Cauldron. And it's at least our duty to comment on it in that case. Throughout all of this, at least in this council, this short time the new council has been involved, I've only heard street talk and council talk about Mr. Regentine wanting to readjust his position, and yet I haven't heard any reason to dispute Mr. Pastu's desire to keep Mr. Regentine on his management team. And it's the same analysis goes toward Mr. Shepherd, our city attorney. Twice now I have suggested to the council and to the audience in the City Hall, is there anybody that can tell me anything at all about the quality, even the value of the services dollar-wise for Mr. Shepherd? And nobody... And so there are three issues that I can see that we're facing. Mr. Pastu leaving, Mr. Regentine being qualified or unqualified or leaving rather, and Mr. Shepherd possibly being tested again without any reason to do the testing other than we need to look at fresh eyes or whatever it was. So I think the city council, the mayor made it absolutely clear, the city council ought to respect the mandates in our charter. We have a strong manager form of government. The manager makes the decisions should make the decisions to set the agenda. Because who knows this better than the manager? The manager is our chief executive officer. He's the CEO. And the CEO in every corporation in which I've been involved sets the agenda. When I'm on the board, I can adjust the agenda when we have the board meeting, but I don't modify the agenda. One person cannot modify the agenda. Anybody of these 7 council members up here have no more or no less authority than any other council member. So when one council member says, well, here's the agenda I want you to have, and that's a dispute, I think that, at least in my case in District 2, cuts off the right of 1/4 of the city that I represent to be heard through me. So I'm happy to hear that. We should be asking Mr. Pastu, how do you want to manage us? Using your training, using your decades of successful management skills, who am I to tell you who's to be on your management team? I don't have those skills and I don't want those skills. So as Mr. Crail so eloquently said tonight and last council meeting that I fully support, we should take a step back. Take our collective breath, pull in our horns for a moment, and try to realize the value we have in Mr. Pastu, Mr. Regentine, and Mr. Shepherd. So I think we should stick to policy matters and leave management to management. There are three ways in which I think this can be done, or one way times 3. I believe since Mr. Pastu has clearly said that he wants to continue with Mr. Shepherd. There may be no risk in going through an RFQ, but I think for the time being, we should suspend our RFQ with regard to Mr. Shepherd and do that later if we need to. And move on. Number two, I think we should give a vote of confidence to Mr. Pastu and his choice of the management team, which obviously would include Mr. Regentine.
Please, hold it down, please.
I
Thank you.
appreciate that, but I agree with the mayor. Let's I don't deserve it.
We have a long night, and let's just try to keep things moving as fast as we could tonight. Appreciate it. Thank you.
And while I might not get another chance to say too much or it would be repetitive, I want to say something about Mr. Regentine. I would encourage anybody that has not done so to take a trip down 46 towards Sanford, take a right at the International Parkway, which is the stoplight just before you get to Interstate 4, and drive that little couple of miles of whatever is the road. Anybody that has done that will know how beautiful and beautifully well planned that is. And in doing research to try to let you know why I say that, I've gotten some statistics about those developments. The one from International Parkway to Lake Mary Boulevard, the few miles that it is called the Heathrow International Business Center. Do you know that through Mr. Regantine's leadership, when he was the planning director for Lake Mary with one other person, they created 2.1 million square feet of office space, 90,000 square foot of retail space in that one area alone, 429 room hotel, and 742 apartments just along that road. Then let's talk about Lake Mary Boulevard. One place is called Primera. There are 33,000 square feet of real estate space there, real estate offices, 1.5 million office space, and a 235 hotel room facility. Then there's a place called North Point, 100,000 square foot retail space, 1.9 million office space, 450 room hotel. And then there's Timucuan, 165 residential units, 177,000 square feet of retail, 71,000 square foot of office space, a golf course, and a 36-acre community park. The one and two people that created that great tax base for Lake Mary was Mark Regentine and his team. Now with Wekiva coming up, the identical issue is facing us, and my question is, do you think Mark Regentine has the qualifications to do the same thing for Mount Dora and the surrounding area around here? So I think that it's obvious to me why Mr. Pastu wants to retain Mr. Regentine and why he is at risk. His family, his well-being financially is at risk because of all of this, and he needs protection, in my view. So those three areas are important for us to consider, and I believe either before or following public comment. If somebody else in the council is not, I'm willing to make a motion to do just that and to give Pastor the space that he needs, as Mr. Crail effectively said, to do the job. I don't know how long it will take, 1 or 2 more months, 1 or 2 more years, I don't know, and I really don't care. I just don't want to upset the urgency that I feel with Wekiva coming in, all the benefits that can protect us, can protect our property values, and all the beauty that we have here that we all know is second to none. So that's my little, with apologies for the length, Mr. Mayor. That's my speech for tonight, and I may add something more later. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Any other council person? Ms. Rich?
Hello. I just want to tell you on a heart-to-heart level, I don't have anything written down, but I just want to tell you, Mr. Pastu, Cliff Shepard, and Mark Regenting, it has been such a pleasure working with you since I've been on council. Going through with what I did with my campaign, it's pretty exciting, and getting my council legs, it was through your mentorship that I became who I am today for the city of Mount Dora. So it saddens me that this would even come up, because I was on council when they did the interviews, and I must have had about 10 to 15 different focus groups of about 200 people all over Mount Dora, and I took 10 of the resumes, and it all came down to the top 2. And it's kind of funny, because on the meet and greet on the Friday night, I remember the other candidate, he was kind of more, up and sparkly and everything. And Mr. Pastu was a little bit laid back, and I thought, well, this is going to be our new city manager. Well, that Saturday morning on those interviews, Mr. Pastu just blew it out of the water. And Mr. Pastu, he goes to all the events. He's really caring about our community. I've never seen a city manager do that before. And for this to happen, that the 3 great people who head our city and the staff, it's questionable, it just kind of saddens me. So that's just a little bit from my heart.
Any other council want to talk now at this point?
Yes, I was truly taken aback and shocked when Mr. Pastu read his statement at last week's council meeting. I've met with him many times since I took office in November. We discussed mostly constituent issues that they had brought to me to help get resolved. None of the points that he outlined in his memo of the 19th of January were anything that he expressed during those meetings that were both cordial and productive. I like Mr. Pastu as a person, but I find this memo creates a very difficult relationship between the city manager and the council going forward. And the storm that this memo generated is very, very troubling to me. A new council was elected in November because the citizens wanted changes in government to provide better protections for the environment, more equal treatment for all citizens, the preservation and enhancement of the ambiance, authenticity, and quality of life of this town, and an independent thinking and responsive council that was not just a rubber stamp. Now, let me make this perfectly clear. No one ever has approached me about replacing the city manager. As far as Mr. Regenting is concerned, he is not in our chain of command. The citizens are in control. The council responds to those citizens, and the city manager responds to the council, as does the city attorney. To me, it is just good business sense to get a rebid of any contractual services after a specific length of time. This will be almost a decade for the city legal services. This is a normal, everyday type of occurrence, and I do not understand the storm that this action has done. It's just good business. And that's my feeling about that. But I want everyone to know that I'm here tonight to listen to you all, and I appreciate all the points of view. I truly do. Both of the residents and the business owners and those of you who are opposed. Thank you.
Let's be respectful out there, please. Okay, this is not going to be a free-for-all. Thank you very much.
I'd like to hear to talk about the facts. And as I stated in the January 19th council meeting, I was taken back by Mr. Pastou's memorandum. Mr. Pastou laid out what his intentions are on the last page, last sentence of his memorandum, which reads in part, I intend to present an employment agreement for Mr. Regentine February 2nd for City Council consideration, along with my resignation honoring the terms of my separation agreement. And let me add, at the January 19th council meeting, after Mr. Pastou read his memorandum, Mayor Garone asked Mr. Pastou to reconsider his resignation 3 times, and that audio was recorded by the city. The decision is Mr. Pastou's.
Thank
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, thank you all for coming. I really do appreciate everyone's participation. I too was taken aback by Mr. Pastou's memo. And a few things that I'd like to comment somewhat extemporaneously. Every one of us got here today because our roads were cleared, our lights worked, our toilets flushed, our city operated. We should, as I think of things on the output side, how is it that are things coming out? Is the city working? Is it taken care of? Juxtapose that against inputs. I'm sure there are many in this room right now that would say, we can really do without that fellow speaking right now. And I would have to agree with you that you can, as I would suggest that we could with any one of these other council members. And I would suggest to you also that 12 months ago, no one knew how to spell Mr. Pastou's last name. To suggest that, as some have, that some people are bigger than Mount Dora is insulting to those who love Mount Dora through and through and understand that none of us make Mount Dora, but all of us make Mount Dora. I have read and heard many things. I'm a troller out on social media. I have read many interesting things, and I must tell you that I'd like to deal in facts also. There are some false arguments being made. We do not have, as my reading has shown, anything known as a strong city manager. Often in government speak, we have something called a strong mayor. We do not have that. We have a mayor-council form of government. The use of the word strong as an adverb, I guess, or adjective, is to describe something that's just not in our charter. The facts are that we have a type of government where the citizens are on top. I've read a lot besmirching the ability of new council members, and I must tell you that while I could get up here and speak very highly of Mr. Crail's experience or Ms. Tillett's experience. I could also speak highly of Ms. Rich and Mr. Rolfson's experience. That is not something that we need to do this evening, because back in November and the year prior in November, you as citizens elected your board. To think that my opinion is better than Mr. Pastou's, it is not. Your opinion is what matters. I'm going to listen to your opinion. I've been married nearly 30 years, and I have the ability to change my mind. And having said that, I truly leave an open mind. Some things have been said about Mr. Regentine, and I am absolutely clear that in every public opportunity I've had, I have always been one to say only good things about Mr. Regentine. One of my family's favorite stories of raising our kids involves Mr. Regentine. I have nothing bad to say about Mr. Regentine. And as a council member, I should keep my mouth shut, because our charter makes anything, whether Mr. Pastou cares to fire, demote, give 3 demerits, whatever it is to Mr. Regentine, that is his purview entirely, and I respect that. As to the memo itself, bells are difficult to unring. Bridges that may have been burned are difficult to go back over. So that's one of the big things we're going to have to discuss tonight. Can you undo it? I will not be on council forever, but I want to hope that when there is a council in the future, that the council sits in the proper position on our organizational chart, wherein the council sits over the city manager. So as I listen tonight, I want you all to know that I also am looking out for Mount Dora when I am very, very cautious and concerned that our city would let the hired city manager run the city beyond what the charter calls. The city council meeting should be run by the city council. The city should be run by the city manager. The two should not intersect. I think that's very reasonable, and I think as we talk, we should think about that. I don't know what our action is tonight. I am lacking for an understanding at this point what the motion is. Right now, as best I can tell, that we've gotten a letter from our city manager saying that he intends to resign, and that at this point is the baseline upon which I will collect and use my best judgment for the citizens of Mount Dora. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hey, just real quick, I'm going to, just a couple things that were said, I think, by some of the council people, and I just want to clarify it. And Mr. Alston, correct me if I misquote you here, but you basically were saying that the city attorney works for the city manager.
No, I didn't.
Okay,
I said our manager wants the city attorney to remain on his management team, as I do want him to remain on his management team, generally speaking, because he consults with them, but it's our employment.
Okay, and just maybe make that, maybe this is some of the miscommunication, things that we talk about in here. And again, people can correct me, and I always get corrected because I've been married 52 years. I've been corrected a lot of times myself too. So, the city attorney works for the city council. He is not part of the city manager's team. Okay, and that's got to be made known. He is not part of the management team of the city. He works at the pleasure, so to speak, and that was Mr. Shepard's words at one time. He works at the pleasure of the city council. He's been here 10 years, and again, nobody at this point, we have not, Mr. Shepard has not been fired by this council. Okay, we have asked for an RFQ. Mr. Shepard is very welcome to submit, along with everybody else, his RFQ to have his services retained here in the city of Mount Dora. That is not the issue. As far as I know, and I know I'm going to speak for myself, and as far as I know maybe from everybody else, nobody has ever pressured Mr. Pastu to do the fire Mr. Regentine. Nobody. Now, as there are things come up throughout our the campaign and where things were asked, I know I was asked about the deputy city manager's position. I'll make it clear right now. What I said was that I felt, when I was asked by reporters, what do you feel about the deputy city manager's position? My answers to everybody at that point was that I felt that was premature, with only being here a few days, appointing a deputy city manager without being here long enough to make a determination. That's the extent of my comments, and I'm not sure if that was the extent of anybody else's comments, and I was asked that. It was never said anything about wanting to pressure anybody into releasing Mr. Regentine. Mr. Regentine we have worked together on some projects, and I value his input in a lot of things that we've worked on in the past. If there was some disagreement into maybe a memo I sent, and I'll take that responsibility. And on account of the nature of my response at that time, and I felt I was justified in my response. I had no way, as being a person and as a council person who was dictating anything to to our staff or to anything else from that side of it. With that, I'm going to open this up to the public. What I'm going to do, and I don't know if I mentioned it before, I'm going to allow the public to vent, so to speak, if you like. The 3 minutes, you got your 3 minutes to vent, and we will stay here if necessary as long as you want to, and keep your comments as brief as possible. Try and just please, as a courtesy to people who do want to talk, hold applause, catcalls, anything you want to call it. Just be respectful of everybody's things that they have to say. We can keep this meeting moving as quickly as possible, and so we can go on to just because we're going to be bringing this thing back again, I understand, on February the 2nd. So with that, I'm just going to go left and right, and my left. Okay, so you'll be second. It's hard to, some of these lights, it's hard for me to see down there too much, but you're first on that one, you're first on that one, so I want you to go first, please, and watch the lights too as you talk, if you need to.